Okay. Now, my question is to you folks. Clearly, there's passion in this room. That's why we gathered here on, Tuesday evening? Right? I mean, there's no excuse for me not to be here because I've got nothing to do, right? I'm just a tourist in your city. But you guys have lives over here. But you're here, which means you're passionate about this stuff. Other than Lubna, what are you guys doing about addressing these issues? Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing. So it gives me immense joy to be in a room full of people who just care. And you know what? Every human being, in my experience, cares. The problem is capacity, right? The problem is scaling it. Now, scaling anything and everything that we have all discussed and we're so passionate about is a real challenge. Is it a challenge or?
Of course.
Right? But why would you want to scale?
So the benefit can grow.
So that the impact can grow. Absolutely, because you want that one crank on the handle, right? That one push of that giant boulder off the cliff, and then it'll find its own momentum. And I can tell you, it's not easy, right? And you all know it's not easy, because think about it this way. We're agents of change. We work in corporates trying to change individual, team, departmental, functional behaviors. This stuff we get paid for. This stuff that other people that we're trying to influence also get paid for, and it's mandated most of the time. So you have the GMs or the VPs or the SVPs who go like, oh, you got to listen to this guy we've hired or this gal we've hired, and we're moving towards new ways of doing things. Those are all extrinsically motivated individuals. They're getting paid to do that. And how much challenge do we face when we try and do that? When we try and change
it? Change is so easy.
It is, right? It can be, right? But the beauty of this room is that you're all people who've started that change journey yourself. And change is an I conversation before it is a we or an us conversation. Now, the beauty of things today is scaling is all about mobilization, right? How do you mobilize people? How do you get a critical mass behind you so that you have a ton of hands pushing that boulder off the cliff? And it's not just the 12, 13 of us, giving ourselves bad backs and bad knees trying to push that immovable rock. But the thing is that immovable rock is movable. And that happens through mobilization. And today, now I've got to just play with this, sorry. So is mobilization easy or hard?
It's challenging.
It's challenging.
I don't like to use the term hard or mistake.
What's challenging about mobilization?
Is that being able to have enough resources to be able to scale up in a way that you can actually have enough base, have enough structure or policy in order for it to become mobile on its own.
So I'll kind of give you guys a very quick backstory of what got me into this stuff, what got me started with Peace Through Prosperity. I don't know if I've shared that with Musa. So my background is 5 startups. This is my 5th and final startup. I do not care for any other startups in terms of what I want to do individually. We are working on a startup, but that's a collective thing, right? So my first 3 startups were pretty good startups. We had good exits out of them, and alhamdulillah, can't complain. The 4th one was a joyride. It was amazing fun, blew a lot of money, my money, VC's money. We learned a ton, learned pretty much everything I know from that 18-month experience. But what pivoted for me was during that time, we had an incident in the family. And the incident, and I'm sorry to share a bit of darkness, but there is a very bright light at the end of this tunnel, was my older brother's murder at the hand of extremists. That was the pivot in my life where we sat down as a family and the question was, what the hell happened and why did it happen? Because we're not those people, right? And that started that process of discovery. All of us have that discovery phase and that discovery creature, right? Where we just want to scratch and find out what happens, the why question. And for me, once the rest of the family kind of moved on from the why question, that is where I got stuck, which is why. And what I decided was I was going to put everything on hold, take time out, and the only thing I wanted to do was discover why. And alhamdulillah, I've got a very supportive family who said, you know what, short of getting yourself killed, go and figure it out, because you can't seem to really focus on anything else. So you might as well go and figure it out. And I went to figure it out. And that was like a 2-year journey. And what I figured out at the end of it was something that's common sense for all of us, right? That it's got nothing to do with God by any name, right? It's got nothing to do with any form of religion. It's got nothing to do with any kind of political party either. Why? Because when it comes to any kind of extremism, be it Proud Boys or be it the crazies who claim to be one of us, right? There's a hierarchy. We're talking about visionaries. Over here, you've got the ideologues, if I can spell it. Then you've got your, guess what? Middle management. They also have middle management. And then over here, you've got what I refer to as expendable fodder. It's the expendable fodder that actually goes out and does and commits all the evil that is sponsored, envisioned by these guys, managed by these guys, and then manifested in reality by these guys. So the discovery was that there is an actual corporate structure behind this madness. The discovery was that these guys, they're as human as you and I are. But there's a key difference. The key difference is these guys are super marginalized, right? They don't have access to wealth or access to the opportunities to create wealth. They don't have access to justice. And I'll give you an example. I was doing some research in a small village where there had been an awful incident with a family. And the father and the menfolk in the family were talking about retribution, right? So obviously my first question was, hang on a second, why are you talking about retribution? Why don't we just go to the cops and sort it out? And they're like, well, that guy's a rich guy. No one's going to listen to us. We're poor people. So I was like, you know what? Let's put this theory to the test. You guys go into the cop shop, you have that conversation, and then come back and tell me what happens. And then I will go and have that conversation, because I don't want to sound like an ass, but I do come from some privilege. So this man whose kid had been, something awful had happened, a neighbor had done it, goes into the cop shop, comes out empty-handed, even more angrier than he was going inside. I walk in no more than 5 minutes after him, and I've convinced the station house officer that if he doesn't go out and dish justice, there will be consequences, right? And that validated my theory that these guys actually have no access to justice. Hence, they have no respect for law, because law is not on their side. Same goes for financial inclusion. So they have to go to loan sharks. Why? Because mainstream financial institutes don't provide an easy means for them to become financially included. So for instance, these guys don't really make a lot of money, but the moment they open a bank account, they get taxed automatically, right? Whatever they deposit, they get taxed, right? And that isn't fair, because that guy isn't making enough for the government to be taxing him. In fact, the government should be providing some kind of social security, some kind of social net. So the elements of marginalization for the bottom of this pyramid, the list goes on and on and on. So the first question was, okay, how do we help them? So obviously, we're not the state. We don't have the resources of the state. So we said we'll go and talk to the state. You want to guess how that conversation turned out? Yeah? I walked out a bit of an extremist from that conversation. Why? Because the government does not care. For the record, this video, we're not talking about the Jordanian government. We're talking about another government. I'm not going to name them. Right? Government doesn't care. Okay, so what do? Let's go to NGOs. Now, NGOs, they're overburdened, they're overloaded. And no disrespect, a lot of them are simply ineffective. Why? Because they've got their own bloated hierarchies where the NGO pyramid gets 100 on top and maybe 10 makes it at the bottom. And the other problem with the NGO world is foreign funding comes into places like our countries and then immediately goes out to where it came from, and it's labeled as consultation. It's labeled as administrative stuff. So they give us 100 and they take back 80, and then they leave very little to trickle down. And guess what? There's a lot of corruption in the middle. So very little actually makes it to the people who really need it. So I sat down with my friends, my family, and I was like, okay, how do we solve this problem? And the conclusion we came to,
We check with the bottom of the hierarchy first.
the conclusion we came to was we can't rely on these guys. We can't rely on these guys. What we can rely is on these guys
Exactly.
as long as we consider ourselves included in this box. As long as we don't consider ourselves to be part of the privileged middle tier. We've divided society up quite nicely. You've got the upper class, you've got the middle class, and then you've got the working class, and then you've got, people stuck in the poverty trap. As long as we look at the world and our society through that lens, we're not being inclusive. So the conversation we had was, look, forget the pyramid. It doesn't exist. What does exist, I got a chance to do this. What does exist is a giant pool. And that's where we belong. Right now, the pool is a swamp. And we are the few of the fish that are trying to chew up the garbage and clean that pond. Bring in oxygen into that water so that people can start breathing and having that bandwidth so that they can think about what do we want to change, how do we want to change. I.e., taking that problem of marginalization, addressing certain issues within it, because there are certain issues that we have the power to address, right? Because look, this room is full of privilege. Anyone wants to disagree with that?
We can't.
We can't. Why? Because we're going to go home without worrying about rent. We're going to go home without worrying about what we're going to have for dinner. We're going to go home, alhamdulillah, without worrying about where the school's kids' fees are coming from, where they're buying books from. A lot of worries. Our worries are more around university fees, right? If we want to send our kids abroad. Our worries are more around next career move, right? Our worries are very different to real, actual worries that keep people not just hungry, but angry. So we need to start thinking about how do we address them. So being an Agile practitioner, this 2010, I was like, okay, what we need to do is we need to run an experiment. So, okay, let's run an experiment. What's the experiment going to be? Can we design something that is going to address a number of issues around marginalization in that community? So we started running experiments. What we did was we decided our target audience is the micro entrepreneur. We went after people that even the bottom of the pyramid looks down on, right? So people who clean the streets, people who clean the sewers and the gutters, people who shine shoes, right? So even when a poor guy goes to get his shoe shined, he looks at that poor guy and goes, "You're shining my shoes, man. Thank God I'm not in your position," right? And that's the mindset that society kind of grows and nurtures, where there's an English saying, and apologies for the recording, shit rolls downhill, right? So whatever is the bottommost rung of society, we said that's where we're going to start working. Those are the people we will engage with, we will talk with, and we will try and figure something out. And I remember we called in about 8-9 people. In those days, I still had an office in Islamabad where I had my old software development center, and we got them into a boardroom. And it was strange because Most of these people had never actually entered an office, let alone be sitting in a boardroom. And in some ways, at that point, it really broke my heart when I walked into the boardroom and there were about 10, 12 people sitting on the floor. Right? There are empty chairs around a table, a room slightly bigger than this, but these folks were sitting on the floor. So I walked in and I said, you know what? So I sat down on the floor. And then one of them goes like, why are you sitting on the floor? I was like, why are you sitting on the floor? Because, well, we're not supposed to be sitting on chairs. I was like, well, I don't know. Whoever made the rule made the same rule for you and me. So if you're not supposed to be sitting on the chair, then maybe I'm not supposed to be sitting on the chair either. It was just a funny, ice-breaking conversation. And we got into a conversation with them as what change do you want to see? Now, what we discovered was they wanted to see radical change. They wanted to see change overnight. And when you dug a little bit deeper, it came out quite clearly that the only way to see radical, not evolutionary, radical, immediate change was revolutionary, was violent change. Why? Because they're so fed up of their own lives that they no longer think it is a sin to steal from you. Why? Because God has blessed you with so much, but you're not giving any to me, so God's going to be fine if I just take it from you. That's the mindset that the bottom rung of that society and most societies, including now in England, is arriving at. That if you don't give, it's okay for me to just take. Now, the experiment we ran was, what if we enabled you to incrementally build up your micro business? Because most of these people don't even look at their business as a business. They simply look at it as a means to feed my family tomorrow or tonight, if they're lucky. Right? What they don't realize is they actually have thriving businesses. Like we did another experiment, we went out to a market, and I'm not kidding, there's a long road, there are about 15, 20 carts, and they're all selling bananas. Right? No differentiation, just selling bananas. So I just went and, tongue-in-cheek, I asked one of the fruit sellers, where do I buy apple? And he goes, you buy apple on the Apple Street. I was like, so what is this? He goes, you idiot, this is the banana street. I was like, so when did you open this shop? He goes, about 2 years ago. I was like, okay, why did you decide to sell bananas? He goes, well, he was selling bananas. So I decided to sell bananas as well, because clearly bananas are being sold here. I was like, so why did you think about selling apples? He was like, you idiot, because he's not selling apples and he's not selling apples. And I was like, so if I wanted an apple right here and now, you can't have it. Why? Because you have to go to the Apple Street. Like, what about oranges? Orange Street. I'm like, okay, I'm the fool here. Like, how about you run an experiment where you sell bananas and apples and oranges or something else? And he goes, what if it doesn't sell? Because now I'm going to owe someone money. So you see how closed their vision and their mind is. Their ideas have been enslaved where their mind doesn't look beyond what it can see right in front. So we ran an experiment. The next day, I got my team to go and give this guy, a few kilos of like a small carton of apples, some oranges. It pissed off the others, right? Because they was, hang on, why are you selling apples? It was like, because, this guy got me apples to sell. Why do you get your apples? You should give the apples to the guys on the Apple Street. It's a whole different issue. So there's a whole different conversation happening where I had to apologize, and the next day we had to get everyone something, right? It was like, okay, we'll get all of you a crate of apple, but just let this experiment run and let's see what happens. 2 weeks later, that entire row was selling different stuff. And alhamdulillah, all of them are making money. All of them were making money when they were selling just bananas, right? Maybe not as much. But that just helped open their eyes up to, okay, it's okay to experiment. It's okay to take a slight risk and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we can always roll back and start selling bananas and stop selling anything else. So with that experiment in mind, we designed something called a mini MBA, right? Because the clear thing for us was, these guys are making money because they're still in business. So alhamdulillah, their risk is written and it is coming. So how do we help them grow this? How do we help them scale it? So we designed a 8-hour program. not very long, 2 hours every day, in the evenings when you close your shop and you can hand it off to your child, blah, blah, blah. You come, we'll train you in basic things. And those basic things are so basic, it's unbelievable. Like the first thing, I don't know, I should really go out and do some shopping in some neighborhoods over here that are underprivileged to learn this, but I'm going to rely on your experiences. I went to this one particular neighborhood and I greeted the gentleman. I was like, "Salam alaikum," and he goes, "What do you want?" I was like, "Salam alaikum." Well, "What do you want?" I was like, brother, salam alaikum. He goes, "Fuck off here. Don't waste my time. Do you want to buy stuff?" I was like, "Okay, dude, you called for it, so I'm just going to be an a-hole to you because you're an a-hole to me." And then suddenly he goes, "Dude, you look like an educated man. Why are you fighting with me?" I was like, "Dude, you started it." I was like, "I said, salam alaikum." He goes, "Yeah, walaikum salam. What's your problem?" I was like, "No problem, man. I just want to buy stuff." And he goes, "What do you want to buy?" I was like, "Sakes, he's selling bananas. What do you think I want to buy?" He goes, "Oh." I was like, "Dude, should we start this again?" He goes, "Why?" I was like, "Okay, let's start it again." And it was funny, like tongue in cheek, it just kind of like said, pretend I've gone away, pretend I'm a new guy, salam alaikum. He goes, "Walaikum salam." He starts laughing. He goes, "You're majnoon, aren't you?" I was like, "No, I just want to buy some fruit." So he goes, "Okay, well, what do you want to buy?" I'm thinking, I was like, "How you doing?" She goes, "I'm not selling how are you doing, what do you want to buy?" I was like, "Dude, how are you doing?" He's like, "Life's rough." I was like, "I know." He goes, "How do you know? You don't look like someone who's got a rough life." I was like, "Yeah, but we all are marginalized in our own ways." And that's the message that I kind of take to these audiences, that like it or not, we are also part of that marginalized, and that's why I put myself in this pool. So just on that, because I've been talking for a while, what do you think we are marginalized from? What is hard for us to access? So one of the key things that me and my team decided was, we're going to get rid of the pyramid. At least in our own minds, we're not going to think in that hierarchical pyramid way. And what we are going to look at is a pool of people with the same challenge. And the challenge at a high level, the top level, is marginalization. The list for us is fairly small, right? Thank God. But you're going to have this conversation with the security guard standing there or the guy selling cigarettes on the road, and the list is very long. Now, all we need to do, now the other thing is the people have forgotten the ability to create and write their own stories, right? Like everyone, and there's an amazing song by Supertramp, if anyone is into 70s music. Anyone here a Supertramp fan other than me? No? Well, you guys got bad taste in music. So Roger Hodgson, amazing lyrics from him was, you can be your own superstar, yeah, and create the movie that you want to make. And that for me like became something as I was growing up listening to the music that my older brothers used to listen to. That became an inspiration line. I was like, hang on a second, yeah, exactly, I can create my own freaking movie, right? But those people, they have no idea how to create their own movie, how to create their own narrative of change. For them, change is always something that comes from the outside. Someone always extends a hand, and they grab the first hand that is extended to them. And guess what? The first hand that is usually extended to them isn't a hand that is thinking well of them. The first hand is always a hand that wants to exploit them for one reason or another, be it, political violence, or be it whatever it is. It's always something that is malicious. But every now and then there are individuals who extend a hand that is not malicious, that is genuinely there for them as a helping hand. But then how do you tell the difference? When you've been bitten so many times, when you've been burned so many times, how do you tell the difference? That creates a lot of distrust in society. So if you look at the bottommost rung of society and the topmost rung of society, there's a lot of distrust in those two layers. Why? Because they've gone through similar experiences of abuse, right? Where something has been promised but not delivered. And that takes that element of hope and that element of being confident enough to write your own narrative of change away from them. So for us, one of the experiments was, how do we convince these guys to be able to write their own story of change? So we ran an experiment. We were talking to this one gentleman. His name was Gul Khan. He was an Afghan refugee in Pakistan. And we said to him, okay, Gul Khan, who inspires you? And he goes, oh, my cousin inspires me. Okay, what does your cousin do? Oh, he fight for the Taliban. So, okay, that's cool, maybe. So what's the inspiration there? He goes, the inspiration is he makes $250 a month. I say, okay, how much do you make? He goes, not enough. It's like, yeah, that isn't the question. The question is, how much do you make? Because I don't know. Like, okay, do you keep any books, any records? He goes, no. So, okay, let's start that. Let's start an experiment where you are going to sit down and write how much you sell, and how much does that cost you. Now, this Gul Khan had not been through any training. The first experiment was simply keeping books, right? And he discovered he made close to like $150, $160 a month himself without, putting himself in harm's way. He worked with us on our mini MBA program, following on from our coaching program. 6 months later, we went back to him. I went back to him, and I was like, dude, I'm here to congratulate you because I was looking at your books, and you're making about $350 a month. He goes, am I? I was like, dude, you're keeping the freaking books. He goes, yeah, but I don't know how much it is, conversion rates. All he hears is $250. Oh, wow, $250. I'm like, dude, what you're making in rupees, if you convert it, you make $100 more than that guy does. What do you want to do? And his first thing was, I'm going to call my cousin and I'm going to tell him to quit and come and learn the trade, and I'm going to open up a shop on that roundabout because there's no shoe shine guy on that roundabout. From my perspective, that is reducing the amount of fodder that these guys have access to. Right? Because these guys, they don't come out in the front, they don't put themselves and their own lives at risk. They use what is called expendables, fodder. What would happen if we took all the fodder away from them?
They have nothing to control.
They have nothing to control.
Basically.
And that is the mission. Enable people to write their own narrative of change, be their own inspiration, be the role models in their own communities. So coming to resources, right? I had this conversation with a friend of mine who's a very accomplished professional in the international development community. And the first thing Sarah said was, dude, you're looking at millions, if not tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was like, I've been running this experiment for a year now. She was like, yeah? I was like, yeah. I was like, impacted about 60, 70 lives. And he goes, how much are you spending? And I was like, maybe about $10,000. She goes, a year.
Okay.
So let me break that myth for you. Peace Through Prosperity has a full-time team in Pakistan of 3 people. We have a full-time team in Egypt of 1.5 people. Up until very recently, we used to fund our Yemen team, but now, alhamdulillah, they fund themselves. All of these teams they run workshops almost pretty much every month. And today is a pretty special day. I was sharing this with Iyas, because today we're running a workshop in Jordan, while there's a workshop being run in Cairo, and there's a workshop being run in Karachi, right? So for me, it's kind of like, pardon my English, but fuck you, we are scaling, right? And we're scaling with no external help other than, I need to mention Dropsolid, which is Dominique's company. The only funding we get is from Dominique de Koeman and his company, and that's only because Dominique forces that funding on us, because he goes, you can't have all this good karma on your own, Kabir. So you've got to take something from us. So these 3 teams, how much do you think it costs me and my wife to fund on an annual basis? So we're between, depending on how we scale in certain neighborhoods, and occasionally we'll do things like by tailoring like sewing machines or et cetera, we kind of flex between $25,000 to $30,000 a year, in which we deliver, if I can call it that, life-changing experience for about 500 to 600 people a year, working on our own projects and with partners, where all that we ask our partners to do is mobilize people, bring them in a room, we will do the rest of the stuff that we need to do. What I'm trying to say is mobilization has been made to be a myth that it is hard. It is not. All you need to find is one more person who's just as passionate about it as you are. And then from one, you become two very quickly, and when you become two, you become three very quickly, and then it goes exponential. I'd been thinking about running workshops in places like Lebanon, Jordan, West Bank, Gaza for years. All I needed was access to a guy who's got a similar passion to me. And here we are. We started this conversation, 2-3 months ago, max, right? For me, the biggest challenge was mobilizing. Iyas and Ahmed, that wasn't a challenge at all. Yesterday, a friend said to us, well, you best invite 30 people and maybe 10 will turn up. We invited 20 people and we had 19 in the room with us, right? Mobilization, they make us believe, whoever they are, right? They make us believe mobilization is hard. They make us believe changing society is hard. Now, I might be the majnoon in front of you, but I am telling you, hand on heart, I swear to God, it is easy and it is addictive. The moment you change one life and you hear that story,
It's contagious.
oh, it is so contagious. Contagious to the point where when we could afford to buy a bigger house than we did 8 years ago, we didn't. When we could afford to change recently our car and we were having that car conversation, me and my Zoja were like, nah, no need. When we could do anything, all we think is about, if I spend £1,200 on this, but actually fund that team for a whole month. Fuck this, let's do that, right? That's where the empathy comes in. That's where you start going, actually, this is easier than I thought it would be. And to be honest, doing this from 2010, almost 5 years to it, I can tell you, it is a lot easier than they would make us believe. I'm going to just shut up for a little while and field some questions, right? But coming back to it, all we want is that one crank on the handle, right? And that comes back to mobilization and sustainability. Now, the whole reason why we're doing this in Jordan is simply because we were trying to identify today that from this group of people, who could be our trainer? We were having a conversation about Ahmed and going like, he's already working with an NGO, with microfinance companies. Maybe we can connect him to the mini MBA program, because in Pakistan and in Cairo, a mini MBA program is a prerequisite for certain microfinance companies to actually give you money. So we've convinced them that, look, in the business of micro lending, you've got very high risk clients, right? Not because they'll take your money and run away, because they'll take your money and they won't know how to effectively deploy that capital, right? And they'll waste your money. And that's what happens a lot of the time, that they take the money, and the money isn't great. The money isn't millions, it's $500, it's $200, it's peanuts, right? So we say that, look, before you give them the money, make it a prerequisite for them to go through this program so that they actually have some basic knowledge on how to deploy this capital effectively, right?
In order for it to succeed.
In order for it to succeed. So mobilization isn't hard. Impact for the bang for the buck, so to say, right? How much you spend. Like a friend of mine, a finance guy, a few years ago, he goes, well, you know what? For each person that you guys are training and enabling, you're spending about $600-700. I'm like, yeah, and? He goes, that's not cost effective. I was like, I don't give a shit about the cost. What I care about is the impact we're going to have. And I'll kind of close off on one last story. So there's this guy in 2014. He sells fruits. So he's selling fruits, and there's a kid, maybe 11, maybe 12 next to him. So I inquire, like, is that your employee? He goes, can't afford a freaking employee. He goes, that's my boy. Now, shouldn't he be in school? He goes, well, if he's in school, he's going to go hungry. I said, okay. So after about a mini MBA, about 4 or 5 months later, I'm back in Karachi visiting my field team. And I go, and I'm looking at his stand, and I was like, I don't see his boy. And Abdul Rashid, my project lead, he smiles and he goes, boss, his boy's in school. I was like, yeah, let's go talk to him. So I walk over to him, have a conversation. Remember, this is 2014. Where's your boy? He's in school. Like, so who's helping you out on your stand? He goes, I didn't make enough money to employ, someone else. And this guy lives in my neighborhood and I employ him. One of the side effects of Peace Through Prosperity's mini MBA, which we never planned for, was creating employment. Because what happens when I grow my business as a banana sales guy, and now I've got 2 carts of bananas, I can't sell both the carts, I've got to employ someone. Now, we've been fairly successful, I'd say, with 70-80% of the people we work with, convince them that please don't use your children as free labor. Employ someone, pay them, right? And with that, use that money to put your child through education so that they can write a better story of their future than you can. Anyhow, fast forward, this is after COVID, I'm visiting, and I spot the same guy in a different area. And I talk to my team, I was like, that face is familiar. He goes, yeah, that's that guy. And by the way, that's his 3rd store. He's got 2 others. I was like, Alhamdulillah. I was like, I want to go talk to him. So anyway, I go up to him, I start having a conversation. It takes him a few minutes to clock on who I am. Because when I'm in the field, I don't wear this. I go, because I want to do spot checks on my team, right? I want to go find out that, Faryal's done exactly what Faryal's told me she's done with Iyas, right? There's a bit of a trust issue, right? I respect everyone, trust no one. So anyway, I'm having a conversation with this guy, and it takes him a few minutes to clock who I am. And he goes, you're Abdul Rashid's boss, right? I was like, yeah, I'm his colleague. He goes, you want to know what my son's doing? I was like, oh yeah, I want to know what your son's doing because it's been 10, 12 years, man. He must be a young man. So he calls a guy and he goes, look after my stand. And he goes to me, come with me. I was like, cool. We take a walk down. We walk 200 meters down, walk into a pharmacy, right? And there's this young man wearing like a brown coat, and there's this pharmacist wearing a white coat. And I look at this kid and I go, I recognize that child. And he goes, he's an apprentice to this pharmacist. And he goes, he's gone to school, he can read, he can write. He's really good with chemistry. He goes, God knows what that is, but he's really good with it. And he's training to be a pharmacist, right? And for me, that's Jannah earned as far as I'm concerned, because that's a generation changed, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, look, on the face of it, this stuff looks super hard. Yeah? And believe me, when you start doing it, it is going to be super hard. But the moment you hit one success, believe me, you will forget about everything else. And one of the biggest beliefs I have, from faith is God says, look after mine and I'll look after yours. Look after mine and I'll look after you. And since we started doing this stuff, of course we've had ups and downs. Of course we've had challenging times, very challenging times. But never did we ever lose hope. Why? Because we never stopped this work, right? And that is my faith. And as long as I look after it's going to look after mine. Yeah, and it will open ways and it has opened ways and helped us scale and establish relationships that I can't even comprehend that is reality or that was my reach. Right? So when we think about change, we always think it's above my station, because I'm not an international development agency. I don't have someone a few years ago said to me, you're a philanthropist, and I laughed and I was like, dude, Bill Gates is a freaking philanthropist, right? All of these big guys, they're philanthropists. I'm not a philanthropist. And that person corrected me. He goes, no, dude, you're a philanthropist because you earn and you spend your own to help others. He goes, that's the definition of a freaking philanthropist. You don't have to be a billionaire to change the world. You just have to be one determined individual who finds another determined individual. To close it off, over here you have that community. You are two people who care about trash and recycling, right? These two people. You guys are already doing something about it. Yeah? I loved your idea about going and talking to the imam in the mosque. Why? Because, believe me, the power of that mobilization is incredible. So don't care about the system, because the system will never want to see you prosper doing this stuff, because the system is designed to not allow us as individuals to do this. Change, and particularly societal change, is very much like the remit. It's like, you know, the government is the only institution that has the legal remit to exert violence on people, right? Through the police and the army. In the same way, they own this development and societal change space. And they go, we're the only custodians and guardians and enablers of societal change. And any individual who tries to do it, they do try and make your life difficult. So you have to kind of weave your way and skirt around things when you're trying to bring societal change. But what I want to say is that, look, there's a room full of really passionate people. Find your people. You've already got couples over here, yeah? But there are people like us, more of us than we can ever imagine. Tap into that power of that community and drive these programs as far or as high as you want to. And lastly, thank you very much for listening to me babble. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Kuber, for coming and sharing everything with us. It has a different taste with us because it has that social impact and your personal story. So thank you very much. I'll share all the information and Kuber's information so you guys can, you know, communicate, add, and also if you want to share anything you want to talk about within Agile Jordan or within your network, share that as well. So thank you again.
What's up? Thank you. Thank you very much.